Fight fans worldwide, whoever you are and wherever you are, thank you for watching. My name is HB, alongside my brother in boxing, Breezy, and this is The Hard Hitting Truth. This is a podcast by boxers to give you an unfiltered, unbiased look at the sweet science we love so much. Joining us on the show today is Devin, the hot take specialist, who is also an amateur boxer and trainer, and Adonis, the young sports broadcaster in the making. They're joining us tonight to talk about Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, part 3, how it went down, and all the rest of that good stuff. But before we go any further, please, if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at thht.boxing. Also, if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up, leave some feedback for us in the comments. Most importantly, hit that share button and tell your friends to tell their friends about the hard-hitting truth. Breezy, you ready, my brother?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Ding, ding.
All right. Well, the fight went down, and obviously it's Wednesday right now, October 13th. So you know the results, so this is not a spoiler alert or anything like that. Tyson Fury, still undefeated, still the WBC and lineal champion. This is the hard-hitting truth, so let me go ahead and say this. Me, Breezy, and our other panelist, B.A., who is not with us tonight. He's probably on a bereavement leave. We all picked Deontay Wilder in a prediction for this fight, and this is the hard-hitting truth. We have to admit we were wrong. We went with hard-hitting last time and not so much hard-hitting truth on our predictions. And that happens. You know, I honestly, when it comes down to these predictions, I don't try to be one of those guys who's right all the time. I do this because I love talking boxing. So it's okay for me to be wrong. And I'm definitely man enough to admit it. One of the things that definitely made me pick the other direction is actually Tyson Fury. The man is a master at psychological warfare. And I'm sure he found ways to get inside Deontay Wilder's head, Malik Scott's head, and probably a few others over the weekend. And he got into my head a little bit too. I'm not going to lie to you. Based on how erratic he is, I just didn't know what to expect. And, talking about he was putting on more weight than the last time, I'm like, threw me off. I didn't pick him. But like he said after the fight, when the chips are down, he can always come through. So I don't know if I'll ever be picking against him in the future. Another thing that I really didn't want to side with Tyson Fury. Another reason that I didn't want to side with Tyson Fury is because he made me listen to the words "mother's cunt" on FS1 while I was watching the weigh-in, and I really didn't appreciate that too much either. I mean, Jesus. I don't. I guess he's not familiar with American TV, and that's going to be part of his learning curve a little bit. But man, those are two words that just don't need to be said on Fox. Man, those are two words that I'm okay with not hearing ever be strung together, ever. So Tyson Fury, if you want to do things like that, come over to America, talk a little trash on TV. Please don't say that anymore. Just say, just use Samuel L. Jackson's favorite word, and we'll be okay. Okay, we absorb that a little bit better over here, sonically. We absorb that sonically. Sure. Last but not least, another reason why I didn't pick Tyson Fury heading into the fight is right before we recorded, Breezy. I don't know if I told you about this, but right before we recorded last Saturday, I was scrolling down the timeline and I saw that none other than Drake, aka Champagne Poppy, had picked Tyson Fury to win. And I remember the last time he picked somebody to win, he picked Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz in the first fight. So I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, the Drake curse is back on. But I guess the Raptors broke that curse. So forgot about that one, man. But
yeah.
I don't know why you have to bring up old stuff. You just
Right.
Said anything else.
I don't think
Hey,
about the Raptors.
I had to bring up Anthony Joshua. I mean, God.
yeah, I know that hurts you, man.
Man,
Well,
it's a sad time.
you'll be all right, Devin. Anyway, let's talk about the fight. But before we talk about the main card, let's talk a little bit about the supporting events, the
Hmm.
undercards. Another reason that I wasn't set on picking Tyson Fury was because there were rumors that Jared Anderson, who was the first fighter that was televised that night, there were rumors that Jared Anderson had, you know, represented himself well in sparring with Tyson
Yeah.
Fury, and if you can read between the lines, I think we all know what that means. So there were rumors that he had put it on Tyson Fury a little bit, and hearing that a 21-year-old kid was putting it on the reigning champion in sparring, and then also hearing that uh, Tyson Fury wanted to gain more weight and do all this other stuff, I was just like, man, I don't know what's going on in Tyson Fury's corner of the world, but doesn't look good. But I was wrong, and we see immediately why, if those rumors are true, we see why. If you saw Jared Anderson's performance and the silver lining in this weekend, if you were a Deontay Wilder fan, or if you just or let's just say you're an American boxing fan, because let's honestly, when it comes down to Tyson Fury having the championship, that means that we here in America are going to have to watch heavyweight championship title matches at 3 p.m. on Saturday, and it's just not as sexy for us, to be honest with you. And so, maybe with my pick, I was being a little selfish and sorry. So, but man, Jared Anderson, Breezy, tell us a little bit about that fight. What did you like? What did you like, and what did you see from him?
Well, like you said, if those rumors of him and Tyson Fury and sparring are true, we see why. Like it doesn't watch him perform. It doesn't seem far fetched. He was as good as advertised.
Hmm.
He was very well composed to be so young, stepping up on a bigger stage than he's been on, and he was very confident. And I see why. He went in there, was the second round. He didn't waste any time.
Second
Took it
round.
right to him. Had some head movement. Had some snap on his punches. I want to see what's next for him.
Yeah, Devin, what did you think about Jared Anderson?
I agree with Breezy. I was watching that fight, and I was thinking to myself that in a lot of these prospect fights where it's a promising prospect, normally you see they come out a little bit cautious. They're not so much timid, but they're very aware of the situation, and they don't want to underestimate their opponent. He didn't look like that at all to me. He looked very seasoned. He went right to work, and all respect to his opponent. I mean, but he got him up out of there quick, and
Yeah,
it reminded me of uh, both him and Sanchez, which we'll talk about later. Both of them reminded me of when Canelo was on that card for, I think it was when Floyd fought Cotto, and he went up against Shane. Not obviously that his opponent was that Jared's opponent was a long
on the
season
level of
veteran like
Shane Mosley.
Shane,
Yeah,
but at the same time he exemplified a lot of confidence in his boxing, in his skills, his head movement, and his power. And it looked like he was meant to be right at that stage that he was at. And I'm really, really excited to see where he goes. I mean, especially because he was the only pick on the undercard that I got right. But we'll talk about that later.
Adonis, what about you? What did you take away from Jared Anderson's performance this weekend?
Yeah, man, the composure for a 21-year-old really stood out, especially at heavyweight when you see these guys who got big power, athletically gifted this early in their career. You don't really see the kind of he kind of took a step back in the beginning, but was still applying the pressure. He wasn't going out there swinging for the fences, but he was making sure he was hurting his opponent. We can kind of see where maybe him beating up on Fury in sparring, if those rumors are true, isn't really an indictment on Fury's camp, but just how good Jared Anderson is. John Fury, Tyson Fury's father, very prideful man, very proud of his son. When you got him coming out saying, this is the next guy up, at a 21-year-old was going in there and beating up on my son, you can kind of see how, as Breezy said, as advertised.
Hmm.
Well put, very well put. Jared Anderson, it looked like he has a great mix of speed, power, and defensive slickness. So the silver lining in this weekend for American boxing fans who are looking to see a heavyweight rise through the ranks is that we may not have to wait very much longer because Jared Anderson looks like he has the goods.
Yeah.
He looks like he has a very promising future. So hats off to Jared Anderson. Keep doing what you're doing, champ. We hope to see you on the big screen soon. He's 10-0 right now with 10 knockouts, and his opponent. We should go ahead and touch on this. His opponent was 22-0, and he was fighting out of Russia. And we all know Russian boxers are tough, and he outweighed Jared Anderson by about 20 pounds. It was 2 inches taller than him, and didn't make it through the second rounds. It was a very impressive performance. Another impressive performance was Robert Helenius, and Robert Helenius was in training camp for Deontay Wilder. So when I saw him go out there and perform well, very well, I said, okay, Deontay, okay, I think that gave me some reassurance that Deontay's training camp went well because Helenius in this fight was actually the underdog, if I'm not mistaken.
He was.
He was. And I found it odd because Helenius won the first fight between these two, and this was the rematch. So he went in there and showed the odds makers why they shouldn't have picked against him in the first place. Right from the opening round, he went out there, hurt Kownacki, and the bout ended up in a stoppage. Breezy, what you think about Helenius? He
Man,
looks good.
I think
Do you think he looked better in the rematch than he did in the first fight?
oh, definitely. Like if the first fight had went like the rematch went, there wouldn't have been a rematch because he just kind of went in there and was commenced to whooping butt, So, but I seeing Wilder, him and Wilder, like he was in Wilder's camp, they were sparring. I thought he was the perfect person for Wilder to be sparring in preparation for Fury because he's
Yeah.
tall, he's got some hand speed, he's got some head movement. He's not quite as slick as Fury, but I think it was good training for Wilder. But he definitely turned up in this rematch. He looked very confident, game. His punches actually looked pretty crisp. He was
Yeah.
like Kownacki. Is it Kownacki?
Yeah.
Kownacki.
He had his hands full right from round one. Never really got in the fight. He was tough. He didn't go easily, but it was inevitable the way Helenius was fighting.
Yeah, and Kownacki is a great boxer.
Yeah.
If everybody that's listening out there can recall, he had one of a legendary heavyweight contest against Chris Arreola where
Mm-hmm.
they broke the record, I want to say, for punches
Yeah.
thrown and punches landed in a heavyweight fight. So Kownacki has got the goods. This is just a tough bump in the road for him, experiencing back-to-back losses to Helenius. But again, credit to Helenius. Adonis, what did you think about the performance?
Yeah, Helenius looked amazing, man. You can kind of see where once Kownacki got hurt in that first round, he was really thinking to himself, man, like, I'm already hurt in this fight. The last fight was already a war, and I'm not really making the kind of ground that I need to get back in this fight the way I want to. I just think it was a really hard uphill battle from him after he got hurt in that first round. I saw he broke his orbital, and as we all know, when you have that brawling style the way Kownacki does, and you already got something broken in your face, you can see how it can get kind of hard to be like, man, I really want to keep coming forward. But credit to him, man. He kept moving forward. Had a few low blows in there, looked a little desperate at points just because, and understandably so, when you get into those kind of wars and you are already down that far against a guy that you just can't get to in
Yeah.
the same way that he was in that first fight, you can kind of see where he started throwing everything out there that he could. But credit to Helenius, man. I think he just had his number at this point. He kind of took a little bit more of a back foot approach in the second fight, knowing that he'd be able to land when he needed to. He kind of diffused the brawler in Kownacki. So I think for him to make that adjustment was just really, really good.
Yeah, true. And we'll talk about the low blows a little more in a second. But Kownacki, it seemed like he definitely used that as a defensive strategy. Devin, what did you think about Helenius and Kownacki
You know what, man?
going to war for the rematch?
Watching the fight, I was thinking to myself, similar to what you said, Henry. I was like, oh my goodness, if this is Deontay's sparring partner, Tyson gonna have a night. Like it's not gonna
Yeah.
be anything cautious about Deontay. He gonna come out and he gonna put it on him quick. Um, which makes it's pretty incredible that Deontay and Tyson Fury's team they did a good job of selecting good sparring partners for them in camp.
Yes.
Especially when you watch these
Yes.
undercards. I was kind of disappointed in Kownacki, man. Especially being in amateur boxing for so long. There's a lot of guys, and we can all attest to this. Boxing isn't like any other sport where once you get to a certain level, you just achieve that celebrity status. Henry
Yeah.
talks about it all the time. Especially when he goes to Vegas to watch fights, you can walk up to a fighter in a casino and they're not going to be like, "Oh, get on out of here." They're not going to do that red carpet stuff. They're really welcoming. Most of the time, they'll talk to you. So the boxing community is a bit tight knit. So I've been following Kownacki's career for a while now. I met him at one of the New York Golden Gloves. He won the Golden Gloves twice. So his
Wow.
amateur pedigree, he won the New York Golden Gloves twice, excuse me. His amateur pedigree is stacked. Like he's fought some very, very good fighters, both on the international and domestic scale. So to see him come in like this, I wasn't so much disappointed with his performance because Helenius was just some people just have your number.
Yeah.
That's boxing. But to see him get to those moments of frustration where the low blows came out, that was kind of disappointing, man, because you aren't a bad boxer. You can still maneuver, you can still adjust in fight, try to get inside of him because I, I mean, obviously those, like how Breezy said, those punches were crisp and they weren't missing. Those were heat-seeking missiles that he was letting go on Kownacki. Um, the better man won. That's just it. I was just disappointed in his frustration to go towards low blows, at certain stages of the fight. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes down to it, like I said, he kind of used it as a defensive tactic. And touching on what Adonis said, um, he did suffer he did suffer damage to his eye in the first round, and now we know it's a fractured orbital bone. Um, so it really, it's sad to see him suffer a major loss in the rematch because I know he was looking to bounce back, and like you were saying, Devin, he's such a talented fighter with a lot in front of him in terms of what his future could hold. He lost his first fight with Helenius in New York, and I know that was a
Mm-hmm.
big blow to him because, as Devin stated, he's a two-time New York Golden Glove champion with a big fan base, and he lost in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center to Helenius in the first go round. So it's just a tough break for him. He kind of didn't get a chance to really, get out of the blocks in the rematch because he suffered that damage to the eye, and what most people look at the first round as a feel out round, and unfortunately, Kownacki didn't even get a chance to really feel him out. So um, credit to Helenius for getting the jump on him and capitalizing on it, because in the first fight, Kownacki led, for as the fight began, and then
Right.
Helenius kind of caught up to him. So credit to Helenius for making adjustments to come into the rematch and never lose a round, really. He pretty much dominated this rematch. So it's going to
Yeah.
be exciting to see what's next for Helenius in the future. And then the next fight after that was Frank Sanchez versus F.A. Ajagba. And that was a fight that I didn't think was going to disappoint. And it really didn't. This was a fight that I felt was probably going to be closer than the main card, but I was wrong about that too. Man, Sanchez pretty much went out there and neutralized Ajagba almost from the opening round. Ajagba definitely, had some success in the first few rounds, but Frank Sanchez with his head movement and better footwork, found a way to pretty much neutralize everything that Efe Ajagba would bring to the table, which is a lot of power punching. Efe Ajagba is kind of like a younger Deontay Wilder for the most part, and it was kind of funny because when he entered the ring, and I saw that his hair was longer, and his hair kind of looked the way Deontay Wilder looked in training camp. I was like, man, this Deontay Wilder comparison is getting out of hand.
Right.
But unfortunately for Efe Ajagba, he never got to land that signature right hand that has
Mhm.
already landed one of the knockout of the year candidates for 2021. Um, but Adonis, I'll turn it over to you first this time. What did you like about Frank Sanchez in his victory over Ajagba, and what did you see in Ajagba?
Yeah, I really like that Deontay Wilder comparison because in that like vein, I guess you could say Frank Sanchez kind of played the part of Luis Ortiz in those Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz fights. You could just see like the same issues that Deontay, a single shot guy with big power, was having with the movement with Ortiz was present in this fight as well. Frank Sanchez, his movement for a heavyweight, you don't really see guys with the combination punching, the speed, and the movement all together in the same way he does. They exist, but they're not as common as you would see in other weight classes. He just went out there and he had every single answer for what FA was trying to do all night long. Stung him a few times, put him down. He just really seemed like the more complete fighter at the end of the day. And I know there were a lot of people out there that were really surprised that FA was the underdog in this fight. And now you can see why. The bookmakers, they see these things. And it was very clear once that fight got later in there that Frank Sanchez
Um,
was the superior boxer.
one second, Adonis. I just want to point out for everybody that Devin had his head down and he was shaking his head because he was one of those people that didn't
That's a rough
understand
time, man.
why the odds makers had Sanchez favored. But I'm sorry, Adonis.
Vegas
And
is
continue.
Vegas is a scam.
No, man, it's like at the end of the day, we all fall in love at heavyweight with the big power puncher, with the single shot guy. But sometimes at the end of the day, it all comes back to fundamentals. And Sanchez had those in spades on Saturday night.
Yeah, very well put. And I like the Luis Ortiz Deontay Wilder comparison because one thing that Frank Sanchez and Luis Ortiz definitely have in common is they're both heavyweights from Cuba.
Mhm.
Devin, what did you think about that matchup?
Very interesting. And I didn't.
And Devin,
I
before you start, let me just say in my Robert De Niro voice, we're the only winners. On behalf of Las Vegas,
oh
the
my
rest are
god,
all losers.
this is
Go ahead,
what
sir.
a
What did you think about
what
the
a
fight?
scam. What a scam. But you know what, man? It was interesting. I want to say in between the sixth round, I was getting bored in this between the sixth and seventh round of the Fury Wilder fight. I was getting bored because they weren't doing as much coverage on the like what the corners were saying to their fighters. So I was just scrolling in my phone, and I just happened to go on Tyson Fury's IG, and I saw that both Jared Henderson and Ajagba were his sparring partners in his camp. And I was like, well, that makes sense. Ajagba is so much like Deontay. So that's a good
Yeah.
matchup and a good way to game plan. So just looking back on this fight, both of them have an excellent amateur pedigree. Most Cuban boxers do have that, that great amateur pedigree that leads them to be able to be great boxers. But what really did Ajagba in, man, and made him like kind of let go of his power shots was Sanchez. That mix of head movement, power, and then counter punching, it dead all that stuff that Ajagba was thinking about doing. So he's going back in his corner, and his coaches are like, "You got to throw your hand." He's like, "No, okay." Are you seeing what's happening? Like every time he throws anything, or I throw anything, I miss, and he counter punches back. Frank Sanchez has one of the best uppercuts I've ever seen for a heavyweight prospect. And especially for him to be so big, like how Adonis said, it's similar to Luis Ortiz. Most of the time, you don't see that such fluid movement mixed with head movement and footwork and their counter punching. but he makes it look effortless. So I wasn't too upset that my boy Ajagba got dealt with, but he'll be back, and this time we will be the favorites. So help me God. But if we don't, whatever, it's a scam.
Said we, huh? That's it's a
Oh, I'm
good
Team Ajagba.
indication.
Yeah.
Hey, Breezy, what did I say last time when BA said we?
Oh yeah, that's how you know you're serious, huh?
It's a good indication.
FA, if you're watching,
Sure,
I
big
would love a
fan of
T-shirt.
Ajagba.
Love a T-shirt. Big supporter.
Yeah, one of the things before I turn it over to Breezy, one of the things I will say about FA Jagba and Frank Sanchez for any boxers, any aspiring boxers that are listening, one of the reasons that um, Sanchez was victorious over Ajagba, um, Devin touched on you know, on the head movement and the different combinations he was able to put out. But one thing I also want to highlight is Frank Sanchez's footwork and his feinting. It's so important for you guys out there to keep those feet moving because if you can't move your feet, you're not going to be able to move your hands. You're not going to be ready to move your hands, I should say. Um, so it's Sanchez, even Tyson Fury is kind of a poster boy for proactive movement with his feints, with his head movement, and with his footwork. If you want to be successful in the ring and be ready for what comes at you, you
Hmm.
got to keep your feet moving. You have to keep your head moving. If you keep your feet moving, when those counter shots show up, you'll be able to place that shot and land it. But if your feet are in cement, your hands are also going to be in cement. Breezy, let me not ramble on too much. Let me give you the floor. What did you think about Sanchez versus Ajagba?
Yeah, I thought the comparisons between their matchup and Ortiz versus Wilder matchup, they're justified. Uh, Obviously, Ajagba he has a lot of similarities to Wilder, but I just think he doesn't have the speed to really. That's why I was picking Sanchez coming in this fight. I'm like, I don't think Ajagba is really fast enough to catch him flush. Obviously he's dangerous, and if he does catch him, it could be good night. But I don't think he would land it flush on a guy like Sanchez. Now Sanchez, he's a lot like Ortiz in my opinion, and Ortiz that was my sleeper heavyweight. I didn't think he got enough credit for the level he was at. But and may still be at. I don't know, but uh, Sanchez reminds me of him a lot, but he's a lot younger, and this is more his time now. So uh, I'm excited to see what the future holds for him. He's he looks almost ready, like he's trying to move into my top 5 or 6 heavyweights. I ain't saying just yet, but
Ooh.
he's
I can see it
approaching.
in the future.
Henry put it
Yeah,
on
I can
wax.
see it in the future.
Yeah,
I could see
yeah.
it in the future, thoy. I could see it in the
He'll
future.
be there soon, I believe.
Sanchez club president, put it in writing right now. Breezy.
I ain't going. I ain't running for
Hey,
office just yet. But hey,
hey,
I'm paying
Devin, he didn't
attention to
ask him for a
issues.
T-shirt, okay? So pump your
Yeah,
brakes
yeah,
with
yeah,
this.
yeah. I'm really ashamed, really disappointed in you, Breezy, that you didn't do that. You should just step out there and do it. He'll send us. Uh, Sanchez, we're looking for a T-shirt, please. Thank you. Big fans.
But I
Yeah.
agree, Breezy. The composure um, that Frank Sanchez showed. We spoke about Jared Anderson's composure. For a young guy, it's very impressive. Also for Frank Sanchez, it was very impressive because this was a match that had two undefeated prospects going against each other. So it kind of would let us know out of those two who's going to rise to the top. And Frank Sanchez did it, and he did it in a very composed way, and he was a smooth operator because Efe Ajagba is a man. He's got dynamite in both fists, just like the Bronze Bomber. Well, obviously with the Bronze Bomber, that dynamite is more so in one hand than the other. But Efe Ajagba has the same kind of power, and he didn't get to land pretty much any of his signature power shots in that fight. So
Mm-mm.
credit to Frank Sanchez. Beautiful performance. Can't wait to see what he does next. If you guys remember at the Billy Joe Saunders, Canelo, I want to say it was weigh in Texas, Frank
Mm-hmm.
Sanchez had some words with Tyson Fury. He saw him, went to him, and said, "When are we fighting?" So
Yeah.
maybe that's something that could, be on in the horizon or on the horizon. How I don't. I think it's on the horizon. On the horizon for us. So we'll see. That would be great to see. I would love to see a matchup like that in the future. But moving forward, let's go ahead and talk about the main event. So Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder. Devin, I'm gonna give you the spotlight real quick. Go ahead and tell the fans out there who may not have seen the fight live. Tell them what the atmosphere was like
Let me tell you
before the
something.
first bell
Let me
rang.
tell you something. You had stars on stars on stars. If the fight wasn't as anticipated as it was, if people even had an inkling that this trilogy was overrated, then you know that's your opinion. But you know what talks the most? Money. And it was nothing but money sitting ringside. Okay, billions of dollars, lights, cameras, all that. No scams because this was a legitimate fight. If that is one fight that I wish if I had to just have a ticket to attend any fight in the past, I'd say 15 years between Floyd and Manny, it would have been this fight. This was so, and it lived up to it, and it was hot. It lived up well past the expectation. Um, this was a great weekend for boxing. I'm so proud of our sport. Anything that anybody can say about our sport, and especially coming off the summer with the Paul brothers, them scammers. This was great. This was excellent.
It was a
Yeah.
great fight. No, no, go ahead and tell us because I know you were a big fan of the camera angles, and I was too.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
it looked when they were in the center of the ring with the referee, it looked like I was getting ready to watch a WWE pay per view. The way the looks on their faces and the camera angles that brought it out.
Yeah. So, because I have such a passion for photography and videography and editing, that's something that I was not expecting going into this fight. I thought it was going to be the normal, like the classic HBO view where, you have the camera guy or the camera operator. He just squats down, points the camera up, and the center of his shot is the referee giving the fighters the instructions. And that shot doesn't really capture the raw emotion, anger, anticipation, and just energy that it should for pre-fight instructions. What ESPN combined with Fox did this past weekend, that was excellent. They took an over-the-shoulder shot of both fighters. You never saw the referee's face because in actuality the fight is about, you guessed it, the fighters. It's not about the ref. So there's probably, this producer needs a raise because he basically was just saying like, all right, get the shot of Tyson, switch back to Deontay, switch back to Tyson. And he increased the rate, he increased the frame rate as the instructions got closer to ending. And the next thing you know, you saw both of them in their eyes, they were ready to explode. They could have just fought right there and just said, hey, ring the bell, come on, let's go. You know, that was excellent. That was an excellent capture of raw emotion. And that was exactly the moment where you're like, this is it. This is it. You can't capture that in at a weigh-in. You can't capture that at these pre-fight press conferences. That right there was raw emotion that you could only capture. And guess what? Neither one of them had to say a word. It was just right there in your face. Then boom, 10 seconds later, we got a fight. That's excellent. You cannot beat that, and it should be the standard
and
moving forward.
and you cannot capture that unless you have two polarizing fighters in there, like
Yes, I
Yeah.
Fury
agree.
and Deontay Wilder. Right from that moment, I think we all knew it was going down. Um, obviously we knew beforehand that it was going down. Breezy, the last time we recorded was like 3 hours before before the
Yeah,
main event was scheduled to go live, and we were amped up already. Like
man.
I think I told you afterwards that I didn't even really plan on picking Deontay Wilder, but I got so amped up while we were recording. I was like, I'm picking him. I
Right.
originally planned to say, I think that Deontay is going in there as the angrier man out of the two, and I expect to see fireworks, and I'm kind of rooting for him, but I couldn't call it either way. But I got swept up in the emotion and the Drake curse. I was just like, I'm picking Wilder.
You were gonna pick him. You were gonna pick him regardless. Don't do
I
this.
was going.
You
I
know
was
what?
going to root for him
I was
regardless.
actually planning to pick Fury.
No, you weren't. No.
I swear I was planning to pick him, but what happens? So I picked Wilder. Fury won. I'm like, I knew it was a good possibility. But if I picked Fury to win and then Wilder knocked him out, I didn't want to be that guy. So I was like, you know what, Wilder? I was like, Wilder. You know what I'm saying?
Breezy.
And we was almost right. We was almost
Hey,
right.
So you kept your
We-
pick for the sake of the jinx, is what you're saying. I knew it.
I did.
I knew it.
Maybe. I don't know. But
Hey,
I just
hey,
went with
Devin, we all went out
decision.
on our shield this weekend. It's okay.
I'm like, I'll live
It's okay.
with the results. I'll face it. Like, man.
Yeah,
But
so-
he was almost right.
Shout out to Mark Breland.
You know, yeah.
Hey, don't do that yet. We'll get to Mark Breland. So, right from the start of it, before the first bell rung, we knew it was going down. They had excellent ring walks. There was lots of. I wasn't in the arena, obviously, but I could imagine that you could cut through the tension with a knife, because I could do it in my living room. And it was just me and my wife watching the fight. You know what I mean? And I was just like, ooh, it's going down. It is going down. And it did. Deontay Wilder came out right from the start, aggressive jab downstairs. And you could just tell that his energy in this fight was different. He was remotivated, reinvigorated. He had a game plan. And unfortunately, it just didn't turn out well for him, because Tyson Fury also had a game plan, and Tyson Fury executed his game plan a lot better. I remember in the pre-fight coverage that we did, we were saying that one of Deontay Wilder's biggest, keys to victory is going to be going high and low and using a good focused body attack, and he went right to work doing that. But he didn't get a chance to build off of it, really. He didn't get a chance to go low and then go high. He just kind of stayed low and then wasn't really able to mix it up with highs and lows. Tyson Fury, on the other hand, we said that, the biggest way for him to win would be for him to mix up his approach in the first fight with his approach in the second fight. And he pretty much did just that. He fought on his back foot and fought on his front foot when he needed to, in the spots that he needed to do it. And it was a great performance from both fighters. Very rarely do you get the fighters from the top five in any particular division in boxing, have them fight on pay-per-view, and it lives up to all the hype. This one did. It lived up to all the hype. Everybody got what they were paying for, whether you paid to be there on fight night, or you just paid pay-per-view, or you just paid whatever money to leave your house and go see it somewhere at a bar. Adonis, you saw it in a bar. Tell us what the atmosphere was like in the bar.
Dude, I mean, there's a certain feeling when you're in your living room, you're getting hyped up, you're jumping off your couch. When you have about 200 other people around you and you're seeing this back and forth, I mean, this is as close to theater as heavyweight boxing gets, just pure entertainment through and through. We see these fights out there, and hey, we all love the sport of boxing, right? We love the technique, taking your time, implementing the sweet science. But this fight, I mean, Deontay Wilder coming out, immediately implementing his game plan. Tyson Fury changing the tide. Deontay Wilder coming back off the canvas, him changing the tide again. When you're in a group of that many people and you have this back and forth going on, I mean, it doesn't get more Roman Coliseum than that. You know, when you have all
Yeah.
these people going crazy, it brings out, I guess, what like everybody since the beginning of time has loved about boxing is that, man, this is really going down. Everybody loves a fight, and you could feel the energy in that room that night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well said. I mean, if this fight didn't get your adrenaline pumping, I'm not sure why you watch boxing, to be honest with you.
You may suffer from adrenalitis. Adrenalitis.
Yeah. So, Breezy, what was your takes on the fight and how it went down?
Well, I mean, it was like they said, it was the stuff of movies. I saw a video of Tyson screaming out, "Are you not entertained?" I'm like,
Yeah.
man, like that was perfect. I'm like, you could not be, even if Wilder was your guy or whatever. You know, it was emotional. It was epic. You know, there was a climax and everything. Uh, and they both showed a lot of heart, a lot of grit, back and forth action. Uh, Tyson, yeah, like you said, he just did a better job of carrying out his game plan. Wilder kind of fell off his game plan pretty early, but remained dangerous, and that's how we were almost right in our predictions.
Almost.
Almost so
Hey,
close.
you know what they say, man. Almost only works in hand grenades and horseshoes. So, if you guys haven't seen the fight, quick recap. Fury capitalizes and puts Wilder down in the third as he gets him to the ropes. Breezy, that was another thing that we said. If Tyson Fury can get Deontay Wilder to the ropes,
Yeah,
that's where he's going to be the most successful. And he did just that. I mean, that's what. Let me not get ahead of myself. So, third round, Fury gets Wilder to the ropes, drops him a couple times. Doesn't look good for Wilder at that point. If you guys remember in the second fight, he got dropped in the third round, and he never really recovered from that. So he got dropped in the third round, survives the round, gets up, goes to his corner, gets refreshed, comes back out in the fourth round, and hurts Fury big time with a huge right hand shot right around the forehead or so. Similar to the way he caught Luis Ortiz
Yeah.
in their second fight, kind of a similar shot. And when you see slow motion replays of that shot that he landed, you can see the energy ripple through Tyson Fury's body. The impact of the punch. You could just see it ripple through his body from his head, through his neck, shoulder, and then you could see his back moving. It basically looked like Deontay Wilder turned Tyson Fury into a waterbed for a split second. You could just see that ripple, that tidal wave of energy just go all the way through Tyson Fury's body, and then he loses his feet and hits the canvas. And then almost with 20 seconds left, he gets him in trouble again, drops him, and then Tyson survives that. And then in the the fifth and the sixth round, it looked like Wilder was gaining some real momentum until it looked like he wasn't anymore. Unfortunately, Wilder just looked like he took Mike Tyson's advice from the some of the pre-fight coverage. Mike Tyson said, just go for broke in the first 5 rounds. With the type of power that you got, that's going to be your opportunity to get this guy out of here. And unfortunately, he didn't get Tyson Fury out of there. And he didn't have much energy left past the 6th round. Tyson Fury looked like he got his second wind and kind of got his bounce back in his legs right around 7th or 8th round. And then it was just a matter of time from there. He dropped Deontay Wilder in the 10th round, and then he delivered the knockout blow, a brutal knockout blow in the 11th round right against the ropes. And then the referee, I believe it was Russell Mora, called the contest right there. Awesome fight. One of the best heavyweight fights that I've seen since Anthony Joshua versus Vladimir Klitschko. That was another great heavyweight fight with back and forth action. I want to say that happened in either 2016 or 17. So it's been a while since we've had a great performance like that in the heavyweight division. Just an awesome fight. Did not disappoint. You know, if you're a fan of Deontay Wilder, you got to appreciate what Tyson Fury did in there. And if you're a fan of Tyson Fury, you got to appreciate Wilder for bringing his A game. You could tell that this wasn't the same fight. It was a completely different Wilder from the first fight and the second fight. But you know, we'll talk a little bit more in a second about whether that was good for Wilder or bad for Wilder. But first, let's focus on Tyson Fury and how he secured this victory. And I'll turn it over to you first, Breezy. What did you think Tyson Fury did very well in order to remain undefeated and you know, let us hear that and still at the end of the fight?
Well, I think he was patient and composed on the outside, and just more cerebral on the inside. He was every time they engaged, he was in a better position. You know, and that's really what it's all about. Whoever's in a better position is going to have more success. Wilder, he came out with a game plan with that left, and that's credit to Tyson Fury. Wilder, he kind of took the first few rounds. I gave Wilder rounds 1 and 2, but Tyson Fury didn't really. He was kind of letting it happen. You know, I don't know. Maybe if he got started sooner, it would have been different, or he would have got caught sooner. I don't know, but he didn't lose his composure. He stayed, you know, relaxed, and then in round 3, he ended up knocking him down and really taking the momentum from Wilder. That early, I'm hyped up, I got a game plan momentum. He took that right out in round 3, and then from there it was back and forth. But most of the time, Fury was having his way, you know. But you know, like Wilder's always dangerous, so
Yeah.
that's what made the good fight. And they were both extremely tough. They both had to be tough to give us the fight they did, you know, because they both had big shots, took a lot of punishment, especially in the early first couple of rounds. Fury, you could see like this whole red spot on the side of his body because Wilder was putting that right hand downstairs for a bit. So once we see it happen, and once you go through that, it's hard to have energy as the fight progresses. You've been beat up to the body because you move with your body. So uh, he wanted it so bad, and you know his toughness came out. But he in the end he was just too smart for Wilder. He was a step ahead of him most of the time.
Okay, you know, that very good point. And also just to highlight one of the things you said about maybe Tyson Fury, you know, kind of let that happen in the first 2 rounds. I do remember that Sugar Hill after the first round looked at Tyson Fury, was like, he's going to get tired.
Yeah.
He can't sustain that. He's going to get tired. So, you know, Breezy, you're probably onto something right there, saying that Tyson Fury probably let that happen by design, and that's, you know, that's credit to him as a strategist inside the ropes. It takes a special individual to be able to make adjustments like that on the fly, and that's exactly what Tyson Fury did. Devin, what about you? What did you think? I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. How did you think Tyson Fury secured the victory for himself this past Saturday?
I think one big word, man, is composure. I mean, he's exhibited that he has tremendous amounts of composure, and I think Sugar Hill really helped him uh, locate and enhance that ability when he took him on as a as a coach, and vice versa, him taking him on as a fighter. It's one thing about Tyson Fury, man. Like you just look at him, and sometimes you're just like, it's kind of mesmerizing to think that you could see a fighter like that, and you know, as us as fighters, we look at somebody like that. Oh, he about to come with this herky jerky janky style. And you're like, he ain't gonna do nothing with this, and you see it time and time again, and you're just like, what is this? And the next thing you know, you're looking at his opponent. It's like, oh, this shit is working. and then, and then I want to say it was probably like the round after he knocked down Deontay. where he was really getting into his flow, where he was like doing the head movement, he was doing the feints.
Hmm.
In the fifth round, he almost had a little bit of a Philly shell going on, and that's when I was like, oh damn, it's about to be lights out for Deontay, man. Like he's so good at being able to just stay patient, stay calm, and wait for the fight to come to him. Uh, and he does some of the most he does fundamental things so well, like just reaching his jab hand out just to find his range, stepping back, and then throwing a powerful jab. That did a lot to deter Deontay, especially in the second round. Because if you look at still images of Deontay going back to his corner in between in the second and third round, he looked. It's quite evident what Sugar Hill was saying was right. He's going to get tired, and he was just patient, calm. He waited for his right time, and he was just letting those shots go. I will say that I'm kind of disappointed in the fact that he got away with a lot of things that I felt the referee couldn't exactly give him a firm warning on because Deontay was allowing him to do it. So like the whole Deontay putting his head down and you know Tyson putting him in a headlock. Obviously he's doing that because he knows if Deontay lets that overhand right go, he gonna send you right back to Manchester. So I still feel like the referee should have been a little bit more firm with him, like don't put him in a headlock. But at the same time, Deontay wasn't helping his own situation by putting his head down. And that had a lot to do with fatigue, and it had a lot to do with going back to what I said. Tyson Fury was just very patient and making him, basically just self combust and just make his own self lose. So credit to Tyson, but it was hard to watch, even though I picked Tyson to win for for clarifying purposes.
Adonis, what about you, sir? What did you think about Tyson Fury's performance, and what stuck out to you that one of his attributes that stuck out, and you said that's how he won this fight this weekend.
Yeah, heavyweight's kind of like the land of physical intangibles. You got guys up there with big strength, big power, and Tyson Fury. There are very few guys that do this in the weight division. Marries that so well with his great technique that you see maybe the most complete fighter at the weight class. You could see like he came in super heavy. He was using that clinch beautifully. Not just using it to wear on him, but he was getting a lot of free shots in there just
Yeah,
because he was better fighting on the inside. I
yeah,
think a lot of the body work that he did on the inside got underrepresented by the commentators just because how sneaky it was, and he was able to do that there. He was throwing uppercuts to the head under his arm. There's just so many good little technical things that Tyson Fury does well with his physical advantages. I think it's going to be really hard for anybody, especially somebody like Deontay Wilder, to beat him. His use of length is perfect on the back foot and going forward. In between, I think it was rounds 9 and 10. Sugar Hill was just yelling at him, put that jab in his face. He can't fire the right hand off the back
yeah.
foot. And the reason he's so effective and able to do that is because his length is such a great attribute to use against a guy like Deontay Wilder. I think him being able to marry his physicality and his technique, that's the reason why he ended up getting the win on Saturday night.
Very good point. And I'll go ahead and make my points off of that also. I think it's time for us to acknowledge that the marriage of Tyson Fury as a boxer and Sugar Hill Stewart as a trainer is paying off in dividends. Never did I think that Tyson Fury
Hmm.
would score the possible knockout of the year in the possible fight of the year. I would think that he's capable of being on the winning end of the fight of the year, but I didn't think that he'd also get the knockout of the year. Even after their last outing, where Tyson Fury knocked out Deontay Wilder, I just kind of thought, maybe if he didn't, take that shot in the third round, he would have been all right. But it looked to me that after that shot in the third round in their second fight, Deontay's legs were just gone. His equilibrium was out of it. He was bleeding out of his ear. So, the writings were just kind of on the wall. But now that we've seen it twice, you have to give credit to Tyson Fury and Sugar
Hmm.
Hill. Tyson Fury, after their first meeting, him and Deontay Wilder. He made he really shook it up. You know, in the first fight, I know we touched on this last time we spoke, Breezy.
Mhm.
Tyson Fury had Ricky Hatton, Freddie Roach, and Ben Davison in his corner, amongst others. But he had those three notable trainers in his corner, and he scrapped all of them for one man, Sugar Hill Stewart. So credit to Sugar Hill Stewart and credit to Tyson Fury for making that choice, because I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision to make, but it was a smart decision.
Hello,
That's paying
Anthony
off in
Joshua.
dividends.
Idiot.
Hey, keep it up, man. He's not going to send you another T-shirt. Okay. So,
Edit that out.
so you have Tyson Fury and Sugar Hill. That coupling is paying off, and I'm excited to see what it produces in the years ahead of us. Then also, one thing that we've kind of spoke about. I know, Breezy said. I want to say, I'm sorry, Devin. I think you said patience. Um, Breezy, you said strategy. One thing that I also want to mention that kind of is on the same in the same breath as patience is time management.
Yeah.
Time management for a boxer is probably one of the greatest skills that you can have inside those ropes. Knowing when to work and knowing when you can take those rests is very important. And that's why you could see that Tyson Fury had way more stamina than Deontay Wilder, despite what they look like physically. If you look at these men and you just look at a photo of them, and you were to ask somebody who wasn't a boxing fan, which one of these men has more stamina, 98% of them, and I'm just leaving that 2% out there just for user error or whatever you want to say. 98% of them are going to say Deontay Wilder, if not 100%. That wasn't the case. And it's because Tyson Fury is smart enough and experienced enough to know when to work and when not to work, when to clinch and when not to clinch. And again, after he got dropped in the fourth round, it looked like his game plan from right there was to weather the storm, smother Deontay Wilder's punches, clinch when you need to, land shots when you need to, conserve your energy, and drain his. And
Yeah.
it worked perfectly. His ability to make those type of adjustments on the fly is one of the reasons why he's going to be hard to beat for as long as he chooses to box. I thought Tyson Fury was a guy who kind of had one style, but now we're finding out that he's capable of doing a lot of things. So hats off to Tyson Fury, and hats off to Sugar Hill Stewart. I honestly can't wait to see what they do next. Even if I have to, watch heavyweight contests at 3 p.m., which may not have the same atmosphere for us in America, like Adonis was explaining. The atmosphere was like when he saw the fight at 9 or 10 p.m. It may not be the same. The sun will be out. You'll be eating brunch or something like that. But it's whatever. I've done it before. It doesn't necessarily work, but it works. So I'm excited to see what they do moving forward. Let's talk a little bit about Deontay Wilder. Obviously, it didn't work out for him this past weekend. It looked like he had a great training camp. It looked like he worked on a lot of things that would pay off in a rematch with Tyson Fury. We saw a lot of clips of Deontay throwing his right hand off of a step back. We saw a lot of clips of Deontay throwing multiple left hooks. We saw a lot of clips of Deontay working head movement in camp, and all of these things looked like they were going to pay off, but unfortunately, they did not. And it's also credit to Tyson Fury for taking some of those things away from Deontay Wilder, some of those tools and some of those tricks. We could see from the beginning of the fight, the jab to the body from Deontay Wilder was working because it was kind of stopping Tyson Fury in his tracks and prevented him from getting his own momentum going. But without Deontay Wilder being able to build off of it, jab down, overhand right upstairs, or jab down and then jab up, jab down, jab up, 1-2. Without him being able to build off of that jab to the body, it just didn't materialize the way Deontay's corner would have hoped that it would have materialized. Adonis, I'll turn it over to you first and go in the reverse order. What did you think went wrong for Deontay this weekend?
I mean, honestly, I think he put out about as good of a performance as he could have. I think there is a very clear skill gap. Now, Deontay Wilder is a great heavyweight. Don't get me wrong. Historical power. But if you remember before their first fight, there was this little saying that they were having going on in the Wilder camp. I only got to be perfect for 1 second. You got to be perfect for 36 minutes. I think we've seen that, whereas that's probably true with most heavyweights, Tyson Fury is just a different kind of guy, man. His toughness married with the fact that he is so technically proficient. And he's got 10 years of boxing experience over Deontay Wilder. I think that really showed on Saturday night. He came out with a great game plan, great jabs to the body, wasn't mixing it up, like you said, upstairs as much as maybe you would hope. But I just think what he was doing was unsustainable, man. I don't know if he needed the extra weight. I think ultimately that ended up hurting him. He said he put it on to be able to not get clinched so much. But that's where the technique proficiency comes in with Tyson Fury. Clinching is not only about having strength. There's also a lot of positional technique, head position, arm positions, overhooks, underhooks that you have to be really good at to make sure that you don't get clinched. And Deontay Wilder, credit to him, amazing fighter. I just think that the skill gap in those certain areas, along with him putting on all that weight and tiring out and not being able to keep Tyson Fury down, which is a credit to Tyson Fury, I think all that married together was his biggest issue on Saturday night.
Yes, Adonis, he said that before the first fight. He also said it before this third fight also. He said, you have to be perfect for 36 minutes. I only have to be perfect for 2 seconds. And, it's not entirely true, because it's very hard to be perfect for 2 seconds. Because perfect for 2 seconds in this instance means you would have had to knock Tyson Fury out cold. Not just knock him down, out cold. And that
And
wasn't
the
the
reality
case
is,
in either
he
of the
already knocked him
meetings.
out cold. He did that one time, and that still wasn't enough. You know what I mean? There's just certain
Yeah.
guys out there that you can knock out cold, and Tyson Fury still getting up. That's just a testament to Tyson Fury and the way he is. That matchup for Deontay Wilder, it's just probably the hardest one he'll ever have to face in his entire career.
Yeah. And obviously we don't want to say too much about Deontay after taking the devastating loss, but the the positive note in all of this is that, at least for Deontay Wilder, is that there's only one man that was able to do this to him, and that man is Tyson Fury. He's undefeated. You know, if there's anybody to take an L to, that's the guy. And when you lose to the best, there's no shame in that. When you lose to somebody when you go out and you put out a bad performance and you lose, there's regret in that. When you go out there and you lose to somebody who you know is below your skill level, there's shame in that. But there's no shame in this. So it was a great performance from both men. And Wilder did some things right, but one of the things that Tyson Fury also did right that I forgot to mention was the battle of the feet. A lot of times, like I was saying earlier, boxing's not just about the battle of the hands. Footwork plays a very, very key role in what you're able to do inside of a boxing ring.
Yeah.
And Tyson Fury's footwork was on point from the opening bell. But I digress. Devin, what did you think went wrong for Deontay Wilder this weekend?
You know what, man? I don't want it to sound like I'm a broken record, just echoing what you guys are saying. But sometimes somebody just has your number, and it's no shame in that, because there's this notion amongst so-called boxing fans and people that support the sport that Deontay Wilder got to where he is just because of his power and that he didn't have to do anything else to get there. And I've been a believer in a long time that his power alone is what separates him and has gotten him to this point. But it's not the only thing that that has kept him at that level. You know, this might sound a little weird, but in a lot of instances, you could easily make the case that Deontay's jab might be better than his right hand, because he sets up so many shots with that jab, and he actually puts people on their back foot with that jab. I mean, you could watch the first Luis Ortiz fight. Luis Ortiz for a while stopped going to the body because Deontay was landing a devastating jab every time he came inside. So, I mean, just because he got beat in the manner that he got beat by Tyson Fury doesn't make him some bum. He is an Olympic bronze medalist for a reason. He was chosen to be Vladimir Klitschko's sparring partner. He was hand chosen to be his sparring partner by Emmanuel Stewart, who is the uncle of Sugar Hill. So um, he just did the best he could, man. And I'm gonna be honest, like I picked Tyson Fury to win the fight, and I've told you guys this off camera, but it was a few moments in that fight over the weekend where I was watching that fight, and it was almost like I was watching a relative get beat, because it was so hard to watch in terms of like he doesn't have to show me anything else. He doesn't have to show the world anything else. Like, where is Mark Breland when I need him? I want to say it was in round 9 where Tyson Fury let off about a 6-punch combination in succession, and then stepped back, and it just went right back onto him again. And I was like, this doesn't have to happen. This doesn't have to happen. In my opinion, Deontay Wilder, Fury won the fight, but Deontay Wilder won the night. I truly believe that, because you can train power. I'm sorry, you could train speed, you could train uh, footwork, you could train head movement. You cannot train heart. Either you got it or you don't. And Deontay Wilder has it. He said he wanted to go out on his shield. God damn it, that's exactly what he did. If anybody felt some type of disrespect for Deontay Wilder leading up to that fight, I guarantee you he earned it. And if he didn't, you're a bum and a scam.
I'm gonna push back a
Flat
little bit
out.
though, Devin. When you say that Deontay Wilder won the night, but Tyson Fury won the fight, I'm gonna push back a little bit and just go ahead and say Fury won the fight, but it's a draw in terms of who won the night. They both won the night, man. They both did. Both of their trainers did. You know, Fox and ESPN did. Everybody did a great job with this fight. Both of those guys put it all on the line. Obviously, Tyson Fury won the fight and retained the title and remains undefeated, but they both gave it 110%. So
Well, I would
credit
only
to
say
both
that.
of those
I would
guys.
only say that because if you look back at everything that transpired following the second fight, the excuses, the somebody put something in my drink. It was my costume. Mark Breland sabotaged me. Tyson Fury had laced hand wraps. Something was up with his gloves. To me, this his performance the other night overshadows all of that. And that's why I say I think he won the
Yeah.
night, because it's so easy now to put that on the back burner, because his performance was so that was an all-time performance for somebody that was had the reputation of making some whack excuses. Like, the
Yeah.
only other
Right.
fighter in the heavyweight division I could think that exhibited something like that in a loss was Evander Holyfield, when he was just getting blow after blow after blow, and he was still coming forward. Like that's to me, that's the reason why I feel like he has the edge in terms of, yes, he lost, but he won the night. That's the only reason why.
I can agree with you on that point. Deontay Wilder may not have gotten the redemption that he was looking for in terms of getting his WBC belt back
Hmm.
and becoming a two-time champion, but he should have definitely redeemed himself in the eyes of a lot of boxing fans for putting forth a performance like that we
Yeah.
rarely get in boxing matches of this
Yeah.
caliber. We rarely get somebody that's willing to die in the ring. It doesn't happen. Show me the last guy who did that in a big pay-per-view main event title fight. So, again, credit to Deontay Wilder and Breezy. I'll let you give your take. What went wrong for Wilder this weekend?
Well, I want to say that, like, first off, Wilder's my dude. He's my dude, and he may still be the second best heavyweight in the world. You know, we'll find out. You know,
You
but
know, Breezy, I know that Wilder's your dude because back in the day when we were training, way back in the day,
Long time
you
ago.
were you were always big on Luis Ortiz, and you would always say that if they
What?
fought, Luis Ortiz was going to
yeah,
beat Deontay Wilder. So I know that Deontay
look,
Wilder has to be your guy now because he beat
yeah,
Luis Ortiz twice, and I know that's how Wilder earned your respect. So I feel you,
yeah.
champ.
In that
Surprise
first,
me.
when they first fought Ortiz and Wilder, I would always say, "Well, who you?" Everybody would ask me, "Who you picking?" I'm like, I'm rooting for Wilder, but I'm picking Ortiz. You know, and
I don't remember you saying that. I
I
remember you
don't
just looking at me like Ortiz,
like Ortiz was
Ortiz,
savvy, man.
O
That was my
R
dude too.
T's.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But yeah, he may still be the second best heavyweight in the world right now, Wilder. But if ever something was a gift and a curse, it's his right hand, man. It's his right hand.
Yeah,
And I'm not saying that's all he got. He has so much more than a right hand.
Yeah.
You know, other people have right hands too, and will never really get accomplish what he's accomplished, or wouldn't beat him in a fight. Like I'm just gonna, since we talked about Ajagba, I'm gonna use him. If if they were ever to fight, I would clearly pick Wilder. You know, and Ajagba has the power. You know, he's just as powerful as Wilder. You know, I'm picking Wilder for different more reasons than just the right hand. But I do feel like it did stop him from developing a certain kind of way. You know, it's hard to really embrace the need to make adjustments when you fought 30 people and knocked 30 people out. He's like, yeah, what do I need to be changing? Who's going to tell me different? Well, for one, Fury.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
he learned that lesson twice, maybe thrice. You know, but I did see improvement in Wilder for this fight. Like he had a game plan, like you said, right off opening bell. He was going to the body, bam, bam, body, body, body. I liked it. He even threw a one super obvious feint, you know, and I was like, oh hell yeah, you know, he did one of those and Fury reacted. I'm like, I like what I see. He was charged up. He was he I loved it, you know, but like Adonis said, he said he can't really sustain that. I think he could have, but Fury stopped him. Fury did what he had to do to break that all that energy. But it wasn't just Fury. When he knocked down Fury in round four, he knocked him down twice in round four. He went for the finish, you know, as good as he can. So I think he just punched himself out. Sometimes it happens. That along with the weight gain, you know, if you have a marathoner and he's running all these miles at a great pace, but if any point in that race he just decides to run a 10-second, 11-second 100, he's not going to finish. He's not going to finish. And that's, to me, that's what it looked like seeing that. He went for the finish. He's still dangerous in spots, but most of that time, you know, he landed a few right hands that really had no impact, but it was too close after landing a decent shot. You
Hmm.
know, he'll land a decent shot. He even gave him an uppercut, you know, buzzed him a few more times after knocking him down, but really didn't have enough to finish him. He could buzz him if he took a moment off. Didn't really have enough to finish him, and didn't really have enough energy to not get hit flush in the face. the first
yeah,
time, the first time I walked into a boxing gym for like real training, my coach said, "Look, you get your conditioning up because you'll be so tired you'd rather get hit in the face than to raise your hands to block." And you know, at the time, I'm like, "That's absurd. Not me. That doesn't make sense." But this fight was exactly that. It looked like to me, it just looked like Wilder wasn't even concerned with the punches coming at him. He had the mentality, I can take it, but also he didn't have the energy to really consistently avoid him. You know, one time Wilder, he even ducked. He slipped a punch, ducked. I was surprised, but he only ducked, and that punch went right past him, and then he got stuck right there.
Yeah.
and then got hit again. And I'm like, he has the ability to do it, but he really just doesn't have the energy to consistently do it and do it effectively. So
And to bounce off of that, Breezy, you're also asking him to do something that's not exactly the most natural for him, or something that
yeah,
he's not exactly used to. So a lot of fighters, a lot of pro fighters, they actually like to do their road work at night. Especially Floyd. I've seen a video of Floyd saying that he chooses to do his road work at night because the fight is going to be at nighttime. So you're trying to get him to match that training stamina, and then at the same time, he's doing all of this in sparring, this new style. So he's probably built up some endurance of him doing this in sparring, going to the
yeah,
head body, and then throw a 1-2 upstairs, like Henry said. But that sparring adrenaline and fight night
it's
adrenaline
different.
are two totally different things, and it'll drain you.
Absolutely.
So, like, I loved how you said that. Like, I remember exactly what you're talking about too. He fainted upstairs and he went down low. He threw a shot. The Fury's punch went right past him, but then he was like stuck. Like, oh, damn it! Like,
Yeah,
what am I doing here? Because he's not used to being elusive and using his agility to be in a position like that. And Tyson Fury probably read that situation right away. Like, oh, okay, well, I just have to sustain this for a second and then get back to my normal game plan. So that's a brilliant, brilliant point.
yeah, and
Yeah,
and
and again, for any aspiring boxers or current boxers that are listening, this is why I always encourage working on defense when you're tired in the gym.
yes,
After you hit the
super important.
bag and work mitts with your trainer and hit the speed bag and did, everything that you've done with your gloves on in training, at the end of that, have your trainer throw the mitts at you and throw shots at you and work on catching them and work on slipping out the way and make sure he checks you to make sure that your hands are home where they need to be. If you work on defense when you're tired, then you won't get caught when you're tired in the ring. There's less
Absolutely.
of a chance, at least I should say, of getting caught. Defense is most important, when you're tired. Staying sharp. It's most important when
Yeah,
you're tired.
and
So
it's important to not just practice your defense when you're tired, but practice thinking,
Yeah,
making adjustments when you're tired. Because being tired is not just a physical thing. It seemed like the more Wilder got hit, the more he telegraphed the right hand. He has the heart. You see it;
yes.
yeah,
it's
man.
apparent.
That
But
was that was hard to watch because at one point he was
yeah,
like chicken winging that thing, like his elbows pointed all the way out, and you saw Tyson Fury like backing up, and he was like, "All right, yeah, send it on in there. I got something for you." Like he had his counter punch waiting for him. Now,
and if he was composed enough to think, there was one time you see the right hand coming a mile away. Fury ducked early. He could have just fainted or just held it for a second and then shot it where Fury ducked to.
yeah,
He ducked way early, but he still missed because he was just so tired and he was committed to that punch and he couldn't
yeah,
stop it. So
And I think Henry or somebody was saying earlier about how if like we held up a picture of these two guys and asked which one of them had the better stamina,
yeah,
a lot of that's fluidity, man. Like I
yeah,
don't know if you took Tyson Fury and you said, "Hey, man, running like 8 miles, he can do it in like the best time," But you put him in a ring. He's been doing this since he was 10 years old. Fluidity and efficiency that'll save you a lot of cardio down the line.
absolutely,
Like you see Deontay Wilder in the first round, he was doing the right game plan stuff, but he was really dipping with that jab. Like you could tell it wasn't exactly what he knew. And Tyson Fury at no point in that fight looked like that. They just come off easy money every single time. And that's going to save you a lot when you get to like the 11th and 12th. Even when you're tired, you can still throw effective punches.
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Another thing, I do think Tyson actually did get tired. He was tired, but he was
Absolutely.
certain that Wilder was more tired, and that itself
Absolutely.
can give you a little bit of energy.
And you know
Like you
what,
can
Yeah.
Breezy,
obviously see how
like
tired he was.
that all goes back to something that you just talked about, and Henry too. Like training on your defense can save you energy, and also training the fundamentals. I've lived by this notion for a long time, ever since I've been doing personal training and studying sports science. The greats, all the greats in whatever sport they're playing, they all do something. All of them do the same. They perfect the fundamentals. Every single one of them. Michael Jordan has one of the. If you were to just scientifically try to make up a jump shot, a elbow jump shot, Michael Jordan does it to perfection. Tom Brady has the best stride to throw a football straight down the field, down the seam. Barry Bonds, however people think about him, he has one of the best fluid motions of throwing a bat through the zone to connect on a baseball. Like Tyson Fury's defensive movements, his head movement to dip. Like you see a lot of guys like they'll do when they slip a punch, they're all the way down by their waist somewhere. You only have to move your head just a few inches because a punch isn't the size of a highway. It's only a few
Yeah.
inches. So everything is just so fluid. So when a lot of those punches that Deontay was connecting with, you know, he would knock anybody else out. But because Tyson was moving with such fluidity, those punches were rolling right off of him because he was moving with those shots. You didn't see that with Luis Ortiz. You didn't see that with Spilka and uh, Stavern and guys like that because they were just still targets. Tyson Fury just did that to perfection, and like I said, it's nothing to be ashamed of. He just had his number, dog. Like it's nothing you
Yeah.
could do.
Yeah. And, for my take, what went wrong with what went wrong with Deontay Wilder is pretty much what went right with Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury's time management and being able to conserve his energy, it was the opposite. Deontay Wilder was on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of conserving his energy. He went for broke, and it ended up working against him. He went for broke, even from the onset. He came out there and he was just chopping jabs down to the body relentlessly. And even though they were effective, they weren't effective in the sense of an overall game plan.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can land those jabs to the body, but at what point are they going to pay off?
Right.
At what point?
Yeah.
Unless you do something else. So if you hit him with 100 jabs to the body and then you're tired and he hits you with one punch and lays you out, it's over.
Yeah.
Those 100 jabs to the body meant nothing. They looked good and they landed, but they meant nothing. And that's kind of where it went wrong for him.
Mm-hmm.
What went right for Tyson Fury was him being able to adjust and strategize his way through the fight. And there have been a lot of people since the fight since the fight has ended, said that Deontay Wilder had a poor strategy. That's not true.
That's not true
That's
at all.
not true at all.
Absolutely
The
not.
problem is that Deontay didn't find his opportunities to adjust and make adjustments.
Yeah.
It wasn't the strategy going into the fight. It was the lack of adjustments during the fight.
Absolutely.
The only thing that I would say was a fatal flaw for Deontay Wilder going into the fight was that weight gain. He weighed 238. It's the heaviest he's ever weighed. The last time they fought, he weighed 231, and that was the heaviest he ever weighed in the ring up to that point. So now he came in 7 pounds heavier. And I remember watching the second fight and thinking that something was off with him. And now seeing it twice, I know what it is. It's the weight gain. It makes him look stiff. He doesn't have the same type of agility in his legs. We were saying, Breezy, that one of the keys to victory for him would be having the faster feet and finding the angles with those faster feet to land those shots. That's the way he dropped Tyson Fury in the 9th round in their first meeting.
Yeah.
Is he took that one little short step to the side and came down with the right hand on top of it. Caught Tyson on the top of the head. Another left hook followed that just grazed him, and he went down. Deontay Wilder didn't land any of those. He didn't land any shots coming off of an angle like that in the second fight or the third fight.
Yeah.
That weight looks like it's too much for him. And if there's an adjustment that he needs to make in training camp, it's going to be beating the pavement. Go out there, get a good pair of running shoes, and run. That's what it's going to take for him to be successful moving forward.
And you know what, Henry? That's such a excellent point to bring up because if you think about the strategy that they used to come into the fight, you talked about earlier him going to the body. Customato said that a long time ago. He said the purpose of you going to the body is to just make a deposit. You're trying to fill up a basement of a house with nothing but water, so eventually you can come upstairs and knock the roof off and make the whole thing collapse.
Right.
You can't come into a fight having that strategy and then being that heavy when your body's not used to it. So just from a personal training standpoint and biomechanic standpoint, if you're continuously going down low to the body and a guy that's almost equally as taller than you and almost taller than you, you're exerting all the energy from your legs. If your legs aren't built up to keep squatting up and down, lunging forward, up and down, eventually your legs are going to give out because they're not used to that type of performance. So that you saw it, I want to say probably like in the fourth or fifth round, you saw you saw him become almost like real stoic, almost kind of.
Mhm.
I don't want to say just completely like a statue, but he wasn't as fluid as he normally is. But because he's still so dangerous, I mean, even he I forgot what round it was. He knocked Tyson Fury down the two times. I think it was the fourth or the fifth.
The
Fourth.
fourth.
Well, in the eighth round, if you guys remember, I think it was in the eighth or ninth, he almost knocked him down again.
Yeah.
And Tyson Fury,
Oh,
just because of where they were angled at, Tyson just leaned up on him. If Deontay had just a little bit more energy, he could have just stepped back, hit him with a check hook, and let him just fall to the ground again. And then we're talking about a completely different fight.
yeah.
But
Mhm.
because his
Well,
energy is
that's the
gone.
that's the last thing on my list for Deontay Wilder is another thing that Tyson did very well in the second fight and in this fight, and it's something that Wilder's coach asked him to do. Malik Scott was asking this from him, but Wilder was never able to get it together. Is don't be lazy on the breaks. Anytime you find some separation, try to use it to catch your opponent
Mhm,
off guard.
absolutely.
That's how Tyson Fury dropped him in the second fight. He
Mhm.
came straight in off of the break from Kenny Bayless's break, came forward with a 1-2. Wilder wasn't ready and got dropped. Fury was able to do that to him throughout the third fight. Malik Scott was asking Wilder to do it, and Wilder just couldn't. He couldn't do it. He looked like he didn't have the energy to do
Yeah.
it, and it looked like he didn't have the same athleticism that he had in the first fight to be able to pull that off either. So it looked like those were things that he had worked on in training camp. So I thought it was going to come, pay off and come to fruition in the
Hmm.
fight, but unfortunately it never did. So those are the things that I saw that went wrong for Wilder. And a lot of the things that went wrong for Wilder went right for Tyson Fury. So
Mhm.
it's not all a knock on Wilder. It's kind of a all the things that went wrong for Wilder are kind of a credit to Tyson Fury because he instead of Wilder being able to do it, Tyson Fury was able to do it to Wilder. So it was a great fight. And I've been hearing some rumblings here and there that this wasn't a great rivalry or this wasn't a great trilogy. And I have I have the hankering suspicion that people are saying that this wasn't a great trilogy or a great rivalry simply because they don't want Deontay Wilder's name attached to something that was great in boxing
Yeah.
history. And I'm here to tell you guys that this was a great rivalry, simply for the fact that it was a heavyweight trilogy. And Adonis, how many heavyweight trilogies have you seen in your lifetime?
Yeah, man. I was born in 2001. This is the only heavyweight like as far as saying was this a great heavyweight trilogy? If you're my age, this is the only one you even know. So like by default, like I've seen Bo Evander and all that fun stuff. The great heavyweight fights. But as far as being there in the moment, which you guys know, it's a completely different thing than
Yeah.
watching back in history.
Yeah.
This is the only thing I know as far as like great heavyweight trilogies go. And to say it wasn't one of the greats, I mean, for me, it just seems kind of absurd.
Damn, Adonis, you was born in 2001. Shit.
Yeah, man.
I know.
My back just
Oh,
started
man.
The
aching.
whippersnapper.
So, for Adonis, this is the only heavyweight trilogy he's ever seen in his life. It's without a doubt great to him. For me, you got Bo and Holyfield, and then you got this. I was born in 1984. That's all I got for heavyweight trilogies. I wasn't alive to see the Thrilla in Manila Live or Ali versus Norton,
Mhm.
1, 2, and 3. I wasn't alive for that. I've seen it, and they're great fights. But aside from those three trilogies that I spoke about, Bowen, Holyfield, Ali and Norton, Ali and Frazier. I think there's one other
There's a Floyd Patterson
heavyweight,
one, but I mean that's
Floyd
black and white.
Patterson,
So
black and white era. So, of course, this is a great trilogy. By default, in the heavyweight division, it's a great trilogy. And let's not act like the matchup between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder is not close, because it is. If you go across the three fights, Deontay Wilder dropped Tyson Fury 4 times, and Tyson dropped him 5 times. If that doesn't sound like a close rivalry, I don't know what
I
is.
mean that has all the makeup of an excellent trilogy. I mean, two
Deontay
knockouts in one fight
Wilder,
alone is a historic fight.
Deontay Wilder is the only guy to drop Tyson Fury twice in one round.
Hmm.
There's a host of feathers you could put in his cap. You just can't put the 2-time champion feather in Deontay Wilder's cap at this point. But a lot of other things he's checked off the list.
Yeah.
So, obviously for Tyson Fury, we could talk about his accolades. He's had all the belts in his possession, in the heavyweight division. Obviously, he's a great fighter. Wilder's a great fighter. People may not like how he looks as far as, his technical skills and everything, but this man has stopped or dropped everybody that he's been in the ring
Yeah.
with. And there's greatness in that alone. So I don't know why people would think that this isn't a great matchup, but it was. And unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever get to see it again, just because it looks like the dust has settled on this.
And we shouldn't.
But
We shouldn't. This is a perfect cap to it. And just to allude to that really fast, if somebody wants to make the argument that the same guy won all three fights, that's you're entitled to your opinion.
that's
But
historically inaccurate.
yeah, I mean, it's just not true. And if that was the case, people are trying to present that argument as if the same guy, if he won all three times, then it's safe to assume that you're trying to present that argument and say that he won the first fight outright, which is absolutely not true for anybody who watched that fight. And it's definitely not true because promoters and networks say it's not true, because if that was the case, they wouldn't have ordered a rematch for it, or they wouldn't have invested the funds to make it a rematch. Let me just say this really fast.
Let me say this too, Devin, because
ahead.
I was at the first fight. Shaq walked right past me, and I saw Shaq there for the third fight. And if it wasn't a good fight the first time, why the hell would he bring his ass to Las
Oh, yeah.
Vegas to see the third fight?
Yeah, absolutely.
They were all great fights.
Listen, the trilogy was so good, and I was reading about this. I was reading about this in a sports article from the Los Angeles Times. Because of COVID, the initial plan for them was to have that fight in Allegiant Stadium. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. The stadium where the Las Vegas Raiders play, because
Right.
they were anticipating a crowd that was going to be so large. But because of COVID, the travel restrictions for people coming from England into the US were so tough and strenuous. They could only have, there was no way they were going to be able to sell out that stadium. So it was at the T-Mobile Arena. I mean, it's clear you could hear in the stadium that you can hear the British fans that support Tyson Fury.
Yeah, they weren't really there like they used to.
Yeah.
And, there was a football game in Allegiant Stadium this weekend. So
Right.
I'm
So
sure
they would have obviously, they would have
switch gears.
They would have
like
changed it according to, the football
I don't
season.
think they would have been able to pull it off anyway, just because, striping the field and all that other stuff.
Well, I don't know, man. Bob Arum. Sometimes I think Bob Arum might not even be a real human being. So, he probably would have pulled that off. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and wrap up the show. Let's go around the horn real quick. Adonis, what do you think is next for Fury and Wilder?
For Wilder, man, I think some well-needed time off is probably what's going to be next. Right now they're trying to figure out Undisputed. In my opinion, he's taken a little bit too much damage in these last two fights. In this later part of his career, he's had the Luis Ortiz fights and these Tyson Fury fights. I think that for him sitting back, seeing how this whole title picture plays out, because Tyson Fury, for as great as he is, there's a chance he doesn't end up on top of this, and if he doesn't, he's right back in the mix for undisputed.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that plays out. For Tyson Fury, man, I know they have a mandatory with Dylan White going on. I just think for him, if he's not, I know, we all hate the mandatories. If that doesn't end up materializing, which I know if he wants to keep his belt, he probably will take that fight because the WBC is calling for it. Undisputed's got to be next. We've waited too damn long at this point to get an undisputed heavyweight champion, and right now, if Usyk can get past Joshua again, it's the perfect time to make that fight.
Devin, what do you think?
Adonis almost got me. He almost ring me right in with that trigger name Usyk. But no, man, Deontay. If Deontay chose to retire, I'd be cool with that. Float off into the Tuscaloosa sunset. You deserve it, man. You are an all-time great, in my opinion. But for right now, take some time, recover. Lick your wounds, and then, the classic boxing statement: go back to the drawing board. Just figure out what we want to do, but just trust and believe. You don't owe anybody in this game, in the sport, in life, anything. You started boxing to feed your family, to support your daughter who was sick at the time. And now look at you. You are an all-time great. You're on a historic KO list. Like, people are going to be talking about you for ages and ages. You don't owe anybody anything. Do what you got to do. For Tyson Fury,
that's the hard-hitting truth right there.
Yeah. For Tyson Fury, get rid of this scam artist Dillian White if you got to. And if you don't want to, you can beat him, take the belt from him, and then you can get down, with my boy Joshua, because Usyk, we coming for you, okay?
Yeah. Breezy, what about you?
Well, Wilder, like Devin said, take some time off, go back to the drawing board. I know he plans to fight again. He's talked about that, being a warrior and coming back from a situation like this. But there's still plenty of names I would like to see him face. Really, everybody he hasn't faced. I would still love to see the Joshua fight, Usyk. There's still even Sanchez, Ruiz.
Mm-hmm.
They will all be good fights to me. So there's plenty of options there. But like I said before, I did see improvement in Wilder for this fight, but it really did go all out the window once he started getting hit clean. So maybe like he switched to Malik Scott for this fight. Maybe just one training camp wasn't enough for him to really think like that once his consciousness was being challenged.
Yeah.
So maybe more time can make that, more part of his core, you know what I'm saying? So he can hold on to, these newly learned skills or applied skills when the going gets tough, but like I said, he may still be the second best heavyweight out there. And I'm not calling for this, but I wouldn't be surprised if 2 years down the line he was in position to fight Tyson Fury again.
Yeah. Even though it may not
possible.
happen, he could be in position to do it.
He can wipe everybody else out.
You have to start all over.
It's possible. Then on Tyson Fury, at this point, I did read that he said he's not sure that he has to ever fight again. He'd be kind of comfortable with that. It could be one of those Tyson Fury just running off at the mouth type of things. I think he'll fight again. I don't believe he's retirement, but he's kind of it's on his mind. So
he probably just got hung over. Did you see him partying on stage with Steve Aoki?
Man, him and Sugar Hill were up there going crazy.
Yeah, man. Bro, him and Sugar Hill no shirt on. At the press conference, no shirt on the street, no shirt on. The club, no shirt on. You'd have thought they was J.R. Smith, didn't it?
You would have thought Sugar Hill would have had one of those beers and a can of beer and one of those little thermal jackets on it. That's the kind of vibe Sugar Hill was giving off at the press conference. Like the food is gone at the cookout and I'm in the driveway talking. He had that vibe going on, and I loved it.
Yeah, but I don't think White would be much of a concern for me going against Fury. It's boxing. Anything can happen. It can,
Hey,
but
Devin, keep smacking your lips, man. I'm gonna get the body snatch of your address. I'm
Listen,
gonna
man.
email it to him.
Dylan
he's really.
Dylan White don't scare nobody but himself. You hear me? If you
Hey,
think he gonna
I've
scare
heard.
Tyson Fury,
I've heard some things through the grapevine. They met
Heard
in
it through
sparring
the
before, and it was
grapevine.
one of those how should I say, maybe Jared Anderson situations.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying.
well,
But
come fight night, you got to you can't bet against Tyson Fury. That's all I'm gonna say.
other than that, if Fury needs to be thinking about undisputed,
Yeah.
he's right there.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? That's what his focus needs to be. So
Yeah. So me personally, I would say that for Deontay Wilder, I would say keep Malik Scott, and I think one thing that would benefit him more is getting another trainer. And why do I say keep Malik Scott? Because they have a bond that probably goes
mhm.
beyond boxing.
Yeah.
I said it before. I saw Malik Scott at the first fight, and he was there not just as a spectator, but you could tell that he was Team Bomb Squad all the way. So I think that's somebody that is valuable to keep in your corner, even if they're not the head trainer, or even if they are the head trainer. But I would say bring in another trainer to help, put make the training camp gel even more.
With like a defensive
Another great
coordinator.
mind.
or
Yeah, some
or
something of that
sports
nature. You know
a
what I mean?
sports specialist, I think, in my opinion, somebody that definitely would be able to go to the basics of sports science and biomechanics with him.
Mechanics.
Or just somebody that's more experienced as a trainer, and a
Yeah.
heavyweight trainer. Malik Scott is an experienced heavyweight fighter, but not you don't see Malik Scott in the corner of a lot of heavyweight
Yeah.
championship fights. I want to say that this was the first. So
hmm
I would say keep him because of the camaraderie, but I would like to see him add somebody else on if he continues to fight. As Devin said, he is within his right at the age of 35 or 36. I want to say he's definitely got the right to walk away and say, I've given the sport everything I had. If he continues to fight, um, I think that would be a great idea. I think he needs to run, and um, more importantly, if we're talking about Deontay Wilder, and I'm gonna go ahead and bring up Anthony Joshua and Usyk one more time. If Anthony Joshua loses that rematch to Usyk,
hmm
who's to say Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder wouldn't fill up one of those soccer stadiums in the UK, even without the belts? They would. I think they would, and I think it would be one hell of a spectacle to see that finally go down.
I don't want to see that shit.
Um,
Hey, I'm
hey, well,
tuned
I
in.
think you're the only one on this panel right
You
now,
know,
so I think you're outvoted, brother. Uh,
your tolerance for encouraging this idea, you do it so much. Why do you do this? And you jinx it a lot. I feel like you made
it's a
Anthony Joshua lose against Usyk. I really do. I think you jinxed that fight.
Hey, man. I didn't say anything about. I
You
didn't say anything
you
about that fight.
you
Breezy, did you hear me say anything about that fight?
Nah.
Nothing yet.
you
So
led
anyway,
up to it.
let me go ahead and finish this off. So I would say that would be a fight that would be the biggest payday out there for Deontay Wilder if he chooses to continue to box. And there's other opponents out there too, that would be great entertainment.
Hmm.
For Deontay Wilder, like Andy Ruiz, for example. But let's move on to Tyson Fury. What's next for him? I'd say he just waits it out to see who's going to win that rematch and fight the winner, go for undisputed. If he is forced to fight somebody in the meantime, if it's Dillian White, so be it. If it's not Dillian White and he wants to stay active, Robert Helenius. That's a great fight
Ooh,
to
that's
take.
that would be an interesting fight.
It's a great fight to take. A lot of times they build up these cards like this so that you can see who can fight who next. And Robert Helenius would be right there as a great opponent for Tyson Fury. He's tall. He's got a long jab too, and it would be a nice battle to see.
Mhm.
So I think that would be what I would think would be next for both fighters. It's been a long show. We've talked about pretty much it all. I'm going to go ahead and sign us off. I'm HB alongside my brother Breezy. Thank you, Devin, the hot take specialist. And thank you, Adonis, for joining us tonight with this conversation. To all the fans out there listening, protect yourself at all times and roll with the punches. For any and all inquiries, you can email us at thht.boxing@gmail. Breezy, what happened to peace?
Peace. There it is.
All right, you guys.